Horace Ephraim Roberts. History of Horace Ephraim Roberts by Nancy Joyce Beeler Anderson, third great-granddaughter of Horace. Ephraim Roberts, researched and written February-August of 2004. Updated with more pictures by Randy L. Cooper, second great-grandson, through Jane Eliza Graves Roberts and her daughter Emmeline Elizabeth Roberts, whose first husband was Albert Friend Dayton Cooper. Hath not the potter power over the clay, of the same lump to make one vessel into honor, and another unto dishonor? Romans 9:21. Introduction. Believe it or not, Ripley was the genesis of Mormon frontier settlement pottery. Ripley, Illinois is situated just 48 miles southeast of Nauvoo, Illinois. This obscure township in Brown County eventually became a booming pottery center encompassing a 2-mile radius. Upon discovering excellent light blue shale clay there, John Eby set up shop and fired Ripley's first stoneware in 1836. Stoneware was a much desired product. Required a relatively high temperature for proper baking, but it was much more durable than ordinary redware and had a density that required no glaze in order to be waterproof. Eventually, numerous other manufacturers of stoneware pottery followed. Mr. Eby to Ripley, but one of the first upon the scene was Horace Ephraim Roberts, my third great-grandfather. Horace was acquainted with John Eby prior to his move to Ripley because of their mutual involvement in the pottery in Winchester, which may have influenced his decision to relocate. In 1837, Horace Ephraim Roberts, born April 1st, 1807, his wife Harriet McEvers was born September 3, 1808. To this union came not June 13, 1838, Harriet Emily. Charles Daniel, born October 14, 1843. Morris Geraldus, born May 16, 1848. And Laura Celestia, born August 8, 1850. Some of their extended family migrated to Jugtown, as it came to be known, from Winchester in Morgan County, now Scott County, Illinois, which is about 47 miles south, where Horace had labored in the pottery trade for some years, assisted by his father, Ephraim Roberts, Jr., his wife, Huldah Gibbs, and his brothers. Horace seized the opportunity to produce superior wares in Ripley, where the clay was readily available and perfectly suited for stoneware, considering its plastic-like quality and its excellent drying and firing properties. Good clay must have plasticity, since the success of the potter depends upon the capacity of the wet clay to maintain its shape under pressure of the hand during forming process. The fineness of the particle is also a factor. The presence of small amounts of organic matter encourages the formation of acids, which in turn break down the compounds composing the clay. It is believed that the presence of organic matter in clay is responsible for its plasticity. The 1840 U.S. Industrial Census of Illinois states that Brown County had 2 potteries, which employed 12 and had a value of $4,000. One of those was Horace Roberts' pottery. Considering his expertise in the craft, establishing a stoneware business in Ripley likely paid dividends for the family. The Ripley potters were forced by their location to market their wares during most of the year in the neighboring countryside. Generally, the potteries were smaller, family-owned operations and were not in close proximity to a large river. On June 7, 1840, Father Ephraim Roberts and his son Horace Ephraim were selling pottery in Melzi, southeastern Iowa, just north of Fort Madison, when they attended a Mormon meeting. convened in a barn. Lumen Andros Shirtliff, who served a short mission to Iowa in June 1840, records his encounter with the Ephraim Jr., his son Horace Ephraim. Roberts. 2. According to Lumen Andros Shirtliff, the following is what happened next. I preached to a respectable congregation. When I was about half through, 2 men came in. After meeting, one of them came to me and asked me if this was Mormonism I had been preaching. I told him I had presented a few of the first principles of what people call Mormonism. Well, said he, if this is Mormonism, I have believed Mormonism for years. I believe all I have heard you preach today and a great deal more. I had some more conversation with him in which I learned that he had been a Universalan, but of late his mind had been led to search into these principles. His name is Ephraim Roberts. He said he had never heard a Mormon preach until now. I gave him some more instruction. We parted. I saw him no more until the 19th of the month. Then I was at Sellers. This is in the words of Lumen Andros Shirtliff. Near night, I walked out a short distance from the house, and the Spirit said to me, "Go and baptize Mr. Roberts." I went into the house and inquired for Mr. Roberts. Brother Sellers said he lived about 3 miles from there across the prairie and gave me the direction. I started immediately, and on arriving, I found Mr. Roberts in the house. We conversed 1 hour and found he was quite intelligent. Near sunset, I told him I would walk across the prairie to Brother Sellers. Without saying a word to urge baptism or that I thought of baptizing him, I saw him preparing to walk a piece with me as I bade the family good night, and we stepped out into the yard. Mr. Roberts introduced his son Horace Ephraim to me and invited him to take a walk with us. He did so, and I walked with both of them in the direction to Brother Sellers. We walked about half a mile. When we came to water suitable for baptizing, Mr. Roberts, turning to me, said, "Here is water. What hinders my being baptized for the remission of my past sins?" I told him if he believed what I had taught him and sincerely repented of all his sins and would forsake them and live by obeying every word taught him by those holding the holy priesthood, it was his privilege. He said he believed and wished to obey. I baptized him and his son Horace Ephraim and confirmed them as members of the church on 3. While Horace Ephraim Roberts was engaged in the family pottery business in Ripley, residency in numerous Illinois settlements surrounding Ripley. Commencing in 1838, exiled saints congregated in such places as Quincy, Lima, Burton, Columbus, Rushville, Pittsfield, Naples, Jacksonville, Winchester, and Springfield prior to the establishment of Nauvoo. In their travels, some Mormon refugees had contact with the Ripley folks. These circumstances remind us that our Heavenly Father knows each of His children and provides a way for them to be in the right place at the right time, thereby giving them the opportunity to learn of the gospel. Horace's eldest daughter, Maria Louisa Roberts Newell, recalls these events in her own historical sketch. At the time of the persecution and driving the Latter-day Saints from the state of Missouri, many of them passed by my father's house in the town of Ripley, Illinois. He gave them food and shelter, became acquainted with their principles, and the following. Summer of 1840 were baptized by Elder Eden Smith. Harriet and Horace Ephraim were baptized July 8, 1840, along with his father, Ephraim Roberts, Jr. Horace Ephraim's daughter Maria Louisa was baptized on October 1, 1840, at the age of 10. We were Then, set upon by mobs, our house was stoned, and the windows were broken. Our home and other property were taken from us, and we were compelled to leave it in February of 1841. We went to Nauvoo, taking everything in one wagon and on the road. Father and mother, and the 4 children who had been born at this point. We arrived at Nauvoo, all right. Nauvoo, Illinois. Horace would have preferred to stay in Ripley, where his pottery was functioning well. But he seems to have had no choice in the matter. In Nauvoo, Horace became acquainted with the prophet Joseph Smith, just 2 years his senior. Joseph was aware of Horace's skills as a pioneer potter and convinced him to supply the immediate needs of the people. Maria recalls, "The prophet, Joseph Smith, advised my father to build a pottery and make crockery for the poor saints." But with what, was the question, that only the Lord could answer. However, there was no such word as fail. He went to work and ere long had it in running order. 4. Horace Roberts constructed another frontier pottery, utilizing the few resources he was able to bring from Ripley. His father, Ephraim, was apparently on hand to help, noting the above comment by Shirtliff, who said, "The next time I saw him was in Nauvoo." Except for Horace, there are no land records verifying that other Roberts family members owned property in Nauvoo, but several who converted to Mormonism also left Ripley. Perhaps the extended family shared the dwellings on Horace's property. His older brother, Dr. Daniel Roberts, a physician, also lived in Nauvoo and was a close friend of Joseph Smith. Daniel's son, Orville Clark, told his children that he could remember standing in the doorway beside his father, watching the prophet come up the walk. The prophet stumbled and nearly fell. Dr. Roberts jokingly said, "Well, Joseph, I never thought I would live to see a prophet fall." Brother Joseph laughed heartily at the joke. Horace Roberts' shop was located on his property 4 blocks east of the temple on Mulholland Street in Block 27 of the Wells edition. No reference exists to indicate the source of Horace's clay, its quality, or the type of earthenware he produced in Nauvoo. But the discovery of a wealth of stoneware clays in the surrounding area by the early 1840s had convinced many Illinois potters to discontinue their redware operations. Because of Horace's expertise with stoneware in his Ripley pottery, he would not have been content with inferior products if there was any possibility of obtaining stoneware clay. Nevertheless, Nauvoo's ordinary brick clay was readily available, and Horace may have ultimately resigned himself to redware production. Modern research has revealed 4 basic clay types, ranging from 10 to 15 different colors and textures, all within the city limits of Nauvoo. Outside Nauvoo, Hancock County had only one pottery functioning in 1840, a one-man operation, so the production of earthenware was a pressing need. In an attempt for more local home industry and self-sufficiency, Horace Ephraim Roberts became Nauvoo's first full-time resident potter. Heber C. Kimball was a potter and already settled in Nauvoo, but he did not make pots. By July of 1842, other potters must have been producing earthware, for an article appearing in the local newspaper read, "Nauvoo ahead. Our good city continues to go ahead, notwithstanding the scarcity of 5. Money. We observed the other day the foundation of a large building for a pottery. This is noble trade, and now we have the materials and workmen to produce as good crockery as made in England." Roberts' unique status as an American-born early Mormon potter is noteworthy, for his work predated the arrival of any British or Scandinavian craftsmen by at least 2 centuries. Years. But according to historian Glenn Leonard, his welcome output could not fully meet a pressing need for supplanting imports with locally produced goods. When the Nauvoo Agriculture and Manufacturing Association failed to complete the large pottery, for which it laid the foundation during the summer of 1842, independent shops proliferated and some potters organized for cooperative efforts. By 1845, the Nauvoo Potters Association was formed, comprised of mostly British artisans. No proof exists whether Horace Roberts ever joined the association or any other cooperative effort, but since he would have been well established and accustomed to running a family-oriented business, he likely continued as an independent potter. Over the 5-year period he practiced his craft in Nauvoo, hundreds of pottery items were no doubt furnished to Nauvoo housewives. Many of those pieces would have found their way west and into homes throughout the Mormon corridor. During the Nauvoo era, the Roberts experienced the typical joys and sorrows of Latter-day Saint life. Their numbers were increasing as a 5th child, Ephraim Horace, was. Emily, born May 9, 1841, and Charles Daniel, born October 14, 1843, totaling 4 girls and 3 boys. Their oldest son, Homer, died in Nauvoo at age 11. In 1841, soon after their arrival in Nauvoo, Horace and Harriet performed proxy baptisms in the temple, Mississippi River, for several deceased family members. They also received their first patriarchal blessings in Nauvoo. As a member of the 17th Quorum of 70s in Nauvoo, ordained April 7, 1842 by Brigham Young, Horace Roberts was a faithful patriarch of his family and an active member of the community. Maria Roberts remembers that many times her father was detailed for guardsmen and other public work for the defense of the city and people. Horace's work in pottery certainly was demanding and relentless, but it was tempered by friendships with the good people of Nauvoo. Together, these saints were building a jewel, new life, uniting their faith and works to build a Zion city. Most of Nauvoo's citizens were not wealthy, but neither was they lacking in energy or fine craftsmanship. Glenn Leonard surmises that the treasures of heaven were a sufficient prosperity for most who gathered to Nauvoo. He quotes part of a letter by Orson Spencer, who wrote to friend of the saints' dream of a Zion people. There are not a more contented and cheerful people to be found. You must not marvel if we do not all at once become rich and build large houses and enclose productive farms. If riches were our object, we might readily gratify the most ambitious grasp. We possess every facility for being rich, but us long to behold the beauty of the Lord and inquire in His holy temple. Our people are prepared to endure all things with the Savior, assurance that their reward is great in heaven. Undoubtedly, the opportunity for personal interaction with the prophet Joseph Smith was a sustaining influence on the Nauvoo saints so long as it lasted. Maria valued her relationship with the Smith family. She stated, "I knew the prophet and family quite well. His adopted daughter, Julia, attended the same school as I, and we were quite friendly. I well remember the days of trouble and persecution the saints were called to endure, and the martyrdom of Joseph and Hiram Smith. I saw their bodies in their coffins, saw some of their wounds. They were dark and trying times. We were among those that had to leave our homes in Nauvoo and go into strange lands among strangers and seek a new home and subsistence upon the extreme borders of civilization with nothing to Record us to the charities of the frontiersman or the savage Indian, except the good spirit or influence we carried with us. Before being driven from Nauvoo, Horace Ephraim Roberts and Harriet McEvers received their endowments and were sealed in the on February 1st, 1846 Nauvoo Temple. These covenants would sustain them during the difficult journey ahead. When the saints fled Nauvoo, Horace's father, Ephraim, returned to his former home in Ripley, never to see his son again. But Horace Ephraim Roberts was as adaptable as the clay in his hands, and his life would once more transform itself. A poem by Henry. Wordsworth Longfellow is descriptive of Horace. An old-time pottery. Turn, turn, and my wheel, all things much change. To something new, to something strange. Nothing, that is, can pause or stay. The moon will wax, the moon will wane. The mist and cloud will turn to rain. The rain to mist and cloud again. Tomorrow be today. As the saints were being driven from Nauvoo, Heber C. Kimball, also a potter by trade, is quoted as having said the following: "I am glad that the time of our exodus has come. I have looked forward to it for years. Although we must leave everything, we will go to a land where white man's foot has never trod, nor a lion's whelp's, nor a devil. There we can enjoy it, with no one to molest or make afraid, and we will bid all nations welcome, whether pagans, Catholics, or Protestants. Let us become passive as clay in the hands of the potter. If we don't, we will be cut from the wheel and thrown back into the mill." Again. Garden Grove, Iowa. Horace Roberts' exodus from Nauvoo in early 1846 meant leaving behind another pottery enterprise, but he was no more deprived or inconvenienced than any other. Refugee. Horace moved his family to Garden Grove, Iowa, where they remained until early spring of 1848. According to membership records dated 1847-1848, Horace's older brother, Daniel, his spouse, and some children were also residents of Garden Grove during this time. Coincidentally, Luman Shirtliff, the missionary who baptized Father Ephraim Roberts, was living there with his family and ultimately immigrated with. 8. The Roberts family. During the stay at Garden Grove, families were engaged in planting and harvesting crops for themselves and others, being driven from Nauvoo, as well as making long-term preparations for an eventual journey west. The Garden Grove Council minutes of April 6, 1848 state, Sister Roberts donated $6.75 to help Elders Nathaniel Beach and Warren F. Reynolds, who were voted in as pioneers for the camp. No first name for Sister Roberts is recorded. The donation could have been made by the wife of Horace or Daniel. A covenant was made between these two elders and the camp members living at Garden Grove that they would immigrate that year to the Salt Lake Valley ahead of the rest of the camp. Once there, they would plow, put in crops, make fences, and build homes for the camp that would immigrate. Later, winter quarters, Nebraska, and Canesville, Iowa. Although the exact date of the Horace Roberts family departure from Garden Grove is unknown, they took their leave by early spring of 1848. Their arrival prior to this time is Daniel Roberts, drowned in the Missouri River at winter quarters. Charles is buried in the cemetery at Winter Quarters, Nebraska, and his name appears on the monument. Winter Quarters, followed by Laura Celestia Roberts, born August 8, 1850, in Canesville. Pottawatomie, Iowa, verifying the family relocated there according to the arrangements. agreed to by government officials and church leaders. Maria Louisa Roberts, eldest daughter of Horace, about 19 years old at the time, tells of a personal dilemma she faced while living in Canesville. "I came with my father to Council Bluffs, Canesville, Iowa, and there became acquainted with Elliot Alfred Newell. He wanted me as his wife, although he knew of my former marriage with a man, Isaac Decker, who had deserted me and ran away with another woman not his wife and left me to make my own living best I might. I went and talked with Orson Hyde, one of the 12 apostles that was left in charge of the affairs at Council Bluffs, took my father and mother with me, and laid my case and circumstances before him, and 9. By his counsel was married. He performed the ceremony. I married Elliot Alfred Newell." Few details are known about Horace Roberts' activities in Canesville, Iowa. Living 3 years in the area necessitated supporting his family somehow, and it seems logical he would engage in pottery work, providing he could find a source of clay. At the time, Canesville was a major outfitting location for huge numbers of Mormons and non-Mormons. Mormons headed west, and Horace would have had a ready market for his earthenware. The Pottawatomie High Council tithing record, dated December 18, 1849, lists Horace Roberts offering to the poor crockery $1.50, onions 75 cents, 1½ bushels. In addition, the 1850 federal census listed Horace Roberts as a potter in Pottawatomie County at age 44, with 7 members in his household. Pottawatomie. County records for 1849 show that Horace owned a pottery property at a location known as Duck Hollow, what is now Harrison Street, a short distance north of the junction of Harrison and Harmony Streets in Council Bluffs. These facts affirm that Horace produced earthenware in the area. Surely some of his ware would have been transported west by the emigrants, serving useful purposes on the trail and in frontier kitchens. Horace Roberts undoubtedly planned to leave Canesville all along, but admonishment from church leaders gave him reason to vacate sooner rather than later. Andrew Jensen, church historian, records the following. Horace actually left a year before this was written. The saints who had been expelled from Nauvoo continued to gather to the valley in Pottawatomie country, principally in and around Canesville, now Council Bluffs, Iowa, were somewhat slow in coming to the mountains, which displeased President Young and the authorities in the valley. Consequently, the first presidency of the church, under date of September 21, 1851, wrote a special epistle addressed to the saints in Pottawatomie, of which the following is an extract. 10. We send unto you our beloved brethren, Ezra T. Benson and Jedediah M. Grant, come to this place, and we desire you to give heed to their counsel in all things, and come to this place with them next season, and fail not. Come all ye officers in the church, and all ye officers in the state or county. There is no more time for saints to hesitate. What course they will pursue. We have been calling to the saints in Pottawatomie ever since we left them to come away, but there has continually been an opposing spirit, whispering, as it were, stay another year and get a better outfit, until many who had means to come conveniently have nothing left to come with. We say again, come home. And if you can get one good wagon and team to 5 families and 5 teams to 100 souls, or no teams at all, more than cows and calves to your handcarts, you can come here with greater comfort and safety than the pioneers came here who had nothing to come to, while you will have everything, And here is the place for all the saints to get their outfit for Zion, even from all nations. Therefore, we say again, arise and come. Home. We wish you to evacuate Potawatomi and the States, and next fall be with us. All ye saints of the Most High, and it shall be well with you, if you will keep all the commandments. Commandments. Millennial Star, Volume 14, page 29. Emigration to Utah. A large company of saints who were still at Garden Grove began their trek across the plains in the spring of 1851, stopping in Canesville for final preparations. It was here that Horace Roberts and his family joined the company for their journey to the valley. Laura Celestia Roberts Bell, youngest daughter of Horace, wrote that her father and mother came to Utah in 1851 with the Garden Grove Company. The roster of oaths coming to Utah in 1851, but not attached to a particular company, lists Horace Roberts. His brother Daniel and family are listed in the Garden Grove Company, and it would seem natural for Horace's family to travel with them. The company left Garden Grove May 17, 1851, and upon arriving at Canesville, engaged the services of Harry Walton, an outsider going to California with his family to lead the company. Counting the Canesville saints who joined the Garden Grove emigrants, the total number of souls in county and had charge of emigration. In 1851, a total of 550 to 600 wagons and 5,000 emigrants crossed the plains. Immigrated to Utah, she stated that she knew somewhat of the journey from hearing her folks talk about their experiences. Orville Clark Roberts, son of Daniel, a young man at the age 18, drove one of his father's teams, part of the way. Clark and his brother Bolivar came to Utah in 1850 with the Milo Andrus Company, a year before any of his extended family. Clark returned east in 1851 and was on hand to help the rest of the family on their journey. In all, Clark crossed the plains 13 times. They used oxen to pull their wagons, and his father sent them back twice to help other emigrants across the plains. The first or second trip, they worked a cow back as one of the team and brought her to Utah for a milk cow. She was a real large, partly Holstein cow with long horns, and she would hook. The children had to keep out of her way. Daniel kept this cow for years. On the plains, the buffalo gave the emigrants lots of trouble. They would stampede the oxen and cause them to run away for miles. One day, as they were traveling along, there was a big herd of buffalo crossing the plains and ran between the wagons. Clark stood in the front of the wagon with his gun, and his father Daniel said, "Now be sure and hit it in a vital spot, for, you know, we are short of ammunition." Just then, his buffalo fell. He had hit vital spot all right. There were several buffalo killed at that time, and the people supplied themselves with all the meat they could haul. Daniel's wife said that they would have gone awfully short of food if it hadn't been for the buffalo they killed in route. Provo, Utah. Upon arrival in the valley in the fall of 1851, in response to a request from Brigham Young, the entire Roberts family moved on south to help settle Provo City, incorporated the previous February. By the spring of 1851, a city plot, Plat A, 1 mile square, had been surveyed, beginning in the center of the public square, now Pioneer Park, at the corner of Main Street, now 5th West, and Center Street. The plat extended 6 blocks west of Main Street and 5 blocks north. The numbering of the blocks began in the southeast corner of the plat and ran west, then east on the next tier, and so forth. The Last number, Block 121, ending in the northwest corner. It was in the southwest corner of Block 115, where Horace Ephraim Roberts established his residency, a pottery shop, and kiln. The present-day location would be at the northeast corner of the intersection of 4th North and 5th West, formerly known as West Main Street. University Avenue was previously called East Main Street. According to Jensen's History of Early Provo, Potter Roberts appears to have been the first man to manufacture crockeryware in Provo. He began turning his wheel on the east side of West Main Street in the 1850s. The Roberts Pottery was the first private commercial pottery established in Utah. The Deseret Pottery in Salt Lake City predated it, but was a joint venture of British potters. The Roberts Pottery was also the first in the territory to utilize the treadle wheel and thrown pot method of making pottery. Great Salt Lake City's Deseret News articles announce the progress of Horace's endeavor. February 7, 1852, Deseret News stated, "A pottery is in blast in Provo and good. Crockery is produced by Horace Ephraim Roberts." March 20, 1852, Deseret News reads again, "The Provo Roberts Pottery. Last week, we saw a load of earthenware in our streets from the Provo Pottery, which appeared to us to be of a good quality, with the exception of glazing, materials for which appear to be scarce in our midst at present. The ware will do well for a little season, and let those who can purchase, and it will do the purchaser good and help the manufacturer to means to get glazing and produce a better article next time. All such attempts at improvements are worthy of support and encouragement from the whole people." Horace Roberts located his pottery adjacent to the new fort, which had been built recently, established in the spring of 1850, which by now had expanded south. His property was on the south half of Block 115. Its northern boundary may have begun where the fort ended. Horace Roberts' consecration deed of August 1855 lists 4 rods of fort wall. Among the factors affecting his decision, foremost would be precautions about personal safety. Although settlers began moving out of the fort into their own houses by this time, they did not venture far from the fort yet. The Walker War, having just ended in 1953, was still fresh in their memory, and confrontations with Indians were still a threat. The blocks on the east side of Main Street, the same side of the street as the fort, was the first occupied. The ones on the west followed. Additionally, the adobe yards at the fort location were being used for making bricks, a source of clay should Horace choose to use it. Water was the other consideration for a potter. A ditch was created to bring water down Dry Creek from the Provo River, which flowed through the nearby fort, and a branch from this source ran down Main Street, past Horace's pottery. Horace Roberts received the first certificates of ownership for city lots in Block 115 in Magonig. Had been erected. It was adobe, 1.5 story high with 7 rooms. It had a cellar and porch, also a good well. The potter's shop had 3 rooms. The upper floor was used as a dance hall and the lower floor for making and storing finished pottery. A kiln for baking and glazing the pottery was built nearby. Horace Roberts may have first used the adobe yards on the fort property as a source of clay, but he eventually owned numerous city lots, any of which may have contained clay deposits. Depending on the item to be crafted, a particular quality of clay would render a superior product. Laura recollects that the clay for the pottery was hauled up from the country someplace with wagons and ox teams or sometimes horses. One Researcher found 41 separately listed clay deposits in Utah County. Another contends that Utah County has more sedimentary clay than any county in the state. And Potter Roberts of Provo found an abundance of good clay near the surface for his work in the year 1852. A Deseret News article dated 21 Feb 1852 gives the most accurate clue regarding Horace's search for suitable clay. A pottery is in operation in much better than he expected, in consequence of having different kinds of clay from different parts of the valley to ascertain the best quality, and he is now satisfied that he can make as good ware here as he could in any other part of the world. When a potter discovered a possible source of clay, he experimented with it in this way. He dampened it in the palm of his hand and kneaded it into a ball to see if it had plasticity. The good clay he rolled into a coil that would wind around his finger without cracking. The clay should also be free of alkali. To test the alkali content in the clay, the potter formed a small dish-shaped mound in the palm of his hand and put a few drops of vinegar in the center, watching to see if bubbles would form. Bubbles indicated the presence of alkali or free calcium carbonate. Laura, who witnessed the pottery operation from age 2 to 16, supplied a vivid description of both the pottery and the methods used by her father, although the recollections contain some technical inaccuracies. Father's potter shop was a large adobe building. The lower floor he used for crockery, ware, and the upper floor for a dance hall where the boys would pay for their tickets, with homemade candies, squash, carrots, and such things. Father had what was called a potter's wheel, which was run by pedals underneath it. The wheel was level, and he would put great balls of clay on it and shape it into crocks with his hands while turning the wheel with his feet. Then he had a big sponge which he wet and washed the loose sand and dirt off the crocks. He then put them on a shelf to dry. After they had dried, they glazed them with a lead glazing. People in those days used tea, which they bought in caddies made of lead and paper. Father would melt these caddies in a big iron pot and burn the paper out. Then he would make paste of flour, a compound that looked like flour, and water, and mix with the lead and glaze the crockery in that. After the soldiers came in 1857-1858, Johnson's army, he bought lead bars from them. The bars were about 18 inches long and about as large as my finger, and he made glazing out of them instead of the tea caddies. After the glazing was finished, the crocks were put into a kiln and burned. There were not only crocks, but plates, cups and saucers, bowls, pitchers, mugs, and almost everything that anyone used in the kitchen. If he wanted a different color, he would add lamp black to the glazing mixture. The dishes were made in molds of clay. After they had stood a few minutes on the mold, they would shrink away and could be easily lifted off. They were then sponged and glazed just as the crocks were. The kiln was a big room made of adobe with a door in one end. The crockery was piled in there in such a way as to let the heat go all through it. The fire was built in an arch underneath the kiln. The arch ran the full length. For fuel, he used quaking asp and cottonwood, which was brought from the canyons near Provo. The fire was started slow and gradually increased until the crockery was all red hot. This took a week or 10 days. Father would then close up the place where he fed the fire with sheet iron and dirt to shut out the air, and then leave it for several days to cool off gradually so that the crocks would not crack. People for miles around knew when he was burning crockery. because they could see the smoke coming from the top of the kiln. It was roofed over with adobes, with here and there a 4-inch hole left for the smoke and steam, too. Horace was situated close to numerous settlements north and south of Provo, population base advantageous for marketing his merchandise. According to Kirk, Hendrickson's research, during the years Horace Roberts operated his pottery business, Parowan and Fort Ephraim had any resident potters. Judging from the following reference, folks from towns outside Provo claimed Horace Roberts as their potter. The first culinary water in Pleasant Grove came from ditches that ran down each block. Drinking water was kept in large crockery jars in the cellars. Pleasant Grove had a first-class pottery maker, Horace Roberts, so the housewives had plenty of crocks for storing water. Laura wrote about her father's business practices. Father was known as Potter. Roberts because he was a potter by trade. After father and mother decided to make their home in Provo, President Brigham Young asked father to put up a potter shop because people were so short of dishes and such things. And the potter shop soon became known all around the country, and the poor were supplied as well as the well. To do. Father never denied anyone what they wanted and would take anything they offered as pay potatoes, eggs, molasses, butter, wheat or flour, or anything else, and if his family couldn't use it, he would trade it off for something they could. He used to send young men out with wagon loads of pottery packed with straw and grass or sawdust to sell for him. One day, one of the peddlers was out with a load of crocks. He came to an old Danish lady who said she wanted some crocks and wanted to pay for them with cheese. But she said, "I have nothing to weigh the cheese with." "Yes, I have. Here's my garter. Loop it around the cheese and hook the scales in it." She took a long knit garter from around her knee. "No, no," said the peddler, "I'll take a strap off the harness," which he did, as if a strap off the old sweaty harness was cleaner than the old lady's garter. Probably other helpers. During the period of 1855 to 1865, Brigham Young began an effort to revive the law of consecration and stewardship throughout the church. In August of 1855, Horace Roberts complied with the request of his prophet, deeding land. The pottery enterprise was profitable when compared to the economic circumstances of the Utah's general population at this time. It is difficult to ascertain how this consecration principle impacted his business practices, but consecration deeds were largely symbolic and not literal. In any case, Horace continued to manufacture and sell pottery. The 1860 Territorial Agricultural Census lists Horace Roberts as a potter with $288, 2 male employees $100 per month, crockeryware $2,700. At the 1860 Deseret Agricultural and Manufacturing Fair, Horace Roberts won 3rd place for Best Specimen of Earthenware. Another movement of establishing cooperatives was prevalent church-wide in the 1860s. At some point, Roberts joined the Provo Co-op, and his shop became the Zions Cooperative Pottery, which he operated with the help of his son Ephraim Horace, youngest brother Levi, and nephew William DeWitt Roberts, son of Horace's brother Daniel, until 1866. Levi was a potter in Ripley, Illinois for a number of years and did not immigrate to Utah until after the death of their father Ephraim Roberts, Jr., who died on August 25, 1861. Horace was only 59, but ill health prevented him from working too much after this. Perhaps the long exposure to lead used in glazing pottery caused his demise, as it later did his son, Ephraim, who also engaged in the risks of the trade. William and Levi Roberts continued their involvement in the pottery until about 1874, along with A.H. Bowen, who then bought the establishment. In the early 1870s, advertisement appeared in the Deseret News which read, "Zion's Co-op Pottery, Provo, City. We will keep on hand constantly a complete assortment of choice potterware, which they may offer for sale much cheaper than ever before offered in this territory. Liberal discount to peddlers and other dealers. N.B. First-class molder wanted. William D. Roberts, manager." William produced Stonehoner, was among the early brickmakers of Provo, and was known for many other accomplishments in the territory. His brother, Bolivar, also figured prominently in the history. Levi set up shop and ran the Logan City Pottery, the Naples Pottery near Vernal, Utah, which operated from 1893–1898. Horace Roberts' indispensable skill as a potter and his resulting financial status earned him a position of respect in the community. Coupled with being a man of means, his devotion to spiritual matters qualified him for an honor of a different nature. Church leaders requested Horace Ephraim's participation in plural marriage and young. Apparently, Mary Jane was not satisfied with the arrangements because the marriage did not last. 18. Evidently considered wealthy, Horace was asked by the church leadership to sponsor, by the Perpetual Emigration Fund, PEF, an emigrant, Jane Eliza Graves, coming from England. Jane was an educated commoner who came to live with the Roberts family and began teaching school. Horace Ephraim Roberts could not have known Jane Eliza Graves personally at this time because he was not from England, nor had he ever been. Immigrated with her family. Incidentally, Horace repaid the PEF debt of $66.65 plus and was well known for his penmanship. According to his history, Daniel Graves was a tutor for Queen Victoria's children. See Daniel Graves' history for more details on this matter. This interest in education prompted him to teach his two older daughters by his first wife Elizabeth, Sarah Baker Graves, to read and write. Sarah had died at the age of 29 on January 9, 1840. Daniel then married his second wife, Mary Newman, on June 7, 1840, and they had 11 children. Commoners were not interested in taking an educated woman as a wife, and the titled gentry were not interested in marrying a commoner, educated or not, whose name is unknown, although he is mentioned in her obituary. Jane's home was located directly east of the pottery on the corner of 400 North and 400 West in Provo, Utah. Conclusion. Utah's pioneer communities required about 20 years to develop independence. Along with other essential trades, the pottery industry was vital to the success of early Essex settlements, particularly before the completion of the railroad. An accomplished potter, such as Horace Roberts, was a valued and prominent citizen. Horace Ephraim Roberts, December 25, 1868. Horace's posterity would continue his tradition of pottery for a time, and his legacy of spirituality for generations to come. Moreover, a wide community of friends who recognized and benefited from Horace's fine craftsmanship would honor him in their memory each time they used a piece of his earthenware.